change from when I was asked that question. I was asked, Mr. Cain, would you be comfortable appointing a Muslim to your administration? And I paused and said, no. And then later I said, but it's not impossible. Because I'm thinking from the perspective of what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said when I first heard him 2 or 3 months after 9/11, 2001. Number one, he said terrorism is going to last a long time. And number two, America's got to learn that they, the terrorists, the jihadists, they want to kill all of us. So no, I'm not going to play nice and say that I'm not going to take extra precautions in order to be able to make sure that we can do our job. The second thing that has been floating around out there, my position on, relax, Ellen. She's looking at me like, I didn't know he was going to talk about all that. I want to clear the air, all right? See, traditional campaigns tell candidates to stay away from sensitive subjects. No, I'm not your typical candidate. I go right into the belly of the beast if somebody has misrepresented something that I have said. The second one has to do with the Second Amendment. I said I support the Second Amendment, strongly support the Second Amendment, and if any laws need to be passed relative to guns, they should be at the state level. The reaction was, are you saying the states ought to restrict gun ownership? No. I don't believe states should restrict access to guns. But what if a state wants to pass background checks? What if a state wants to pass carry and conceal? That's what I'm talking about. And some states have done that. So relative to restricting access, no. I don't believe the federal government should restrict access, and I don't believe that states should restrict access because of the Second Amendment. The third one that caused a little firestorm on the internet was a pledge that I was asked to sign by
Susan B. Anthony.
Susan B. Anthony, is it association? Susan B. Anthony organization.
List.
Now, I don't know about other folk, but I read it. And I had problems with one word in there. They had like 4 things they wanted you to sign the pledge for. The fourth one, it said, I will advance that legislation that they have been trying to get passed for a long, long, long time. And I had my staff contact them and ask, could we change that to, I will support that legislation? Because I would sign it if it gets to my desk. And we issued a statement today. The President of the United States can't advance legislation. Congress does. I can only support it, promote it, and sign it. But people went nuts saying the headline, Herman Cain did not sign SBA pledge, pro-life pledge. I am pro-life from the beginning, from conception. Do not believe in abortion. But they didn't consider that small request or point of clarification good enough, so they threw me under the bus. Yes?
Did the Susan B. Anthony Association respond to your request? Because I'm suspecting, as an attorney, that the problem being the word advance is your use of the word advance is from a legal legislative perspective.
Right.
And the Susan B. Anthony's use of the word advance is from a layman's term, meaning
Right.
to support.
Right.
Or to actively support.
Right, right.
And
Good
so,
point.
I'm curious then, did they respond?
I don't have an answer to that. I don't have an answer to that question.
Because I think that is a valid response
Yes.
for you to have question with
Yes.
that. And it is a constitutional issue.
Exactly.
But we have to have clarity. Is this
Yes.
a word of art being used in the style of a jargon?
Very
or
good
is this
point.
a layman's term?
I will follow up on that, but I don't have the answer to that question. But you see my point in terms of what I had issue with. Now, we did release a statement today, if you all have not received it. Ellen Carmichael, who's in the back, y'all know Ellen, she can provide or email you a copy of it where I clearly say I would support and sign the legislation as President of the United States. So, if y'all see some of this other stuff flying around out there, I wanted to set the record straight. Now that I've gotten that off my chest, what do y'all want to talk about?
I
Yes,
knew
sir.
you had an excuse.
There's been some statements from Ron Paul supporters mainly, expressing concern about your position on auditing the Federal Reserve.
Yes, sir.
And your past experience as a member of the Federal Reserve Board
Right.
of Governors.
Right.
And just wonder if you could comment on that.
I'd be happy. I'd be happy to. Representative Paul wrote a book called In the Fed. I believe we can fix the Fed. Because when I ask the Ron Paul people, what would you replace it with, they don't have an answer. When I was on the board of the Federal Reserve in the 90s, we didn't do the stuff that the Federal Reserve Bank is doing today. We never even discussed doing that kind of stuff. So the Federal Reserve today is not the Federal Reserve that I have known for decades prior to this recent decade in terms of controlling monetary policy and controlling inflation. The reason the Fed is inflating our money is because of two reasons, which we didn't have to deal with as much. Number one, the national debt, $14 trillion. Number two, if foreign countries don't buy those treasury notes when they need to be sold in order for the treasury to pay the bills, the Federal Reserve is backstopping and buying the treasury notes. I don't agree with that. And so my point, and the other thing is, the Federal Reserve has in its mission to do two things, and it ought to have in its mission to do just one. They're supposed to control inflation, and they're supposed to control unemployment. That's like trying to hit two targets with one bullet or one arrow. Can't be done. Can't be done. So, now, as far as auditing the Fed, in the vernacular of my grandfather, I does not care. But what Herman Cain has said is, it's not going to be one of my top issues. My top issues start with the economy, entitlement spending, energy, immigration, foreign policy, moral issues, deficiency of leadership. If members of Congress were to get together and bring me legislation to audit the Fed, I'd sign it. But I don't have a problem with it. Now, that being said, you don't need the president to sign a bill to audit the Fed. Representative Paul sits on a committee that already has that authority. Now, I'm not mad at y'all. You understand? It's just that this has been a recurring question. And some people, I don't know who, I don't have time to track it, keep trying to say that I object to auditing the Fed. No, I do not. It's just that it's not going to be one of Herman Cain's lead issues. Yes?
As someone who's worked for the Fed, what would we actually hope to achieve by auditing the Fed anyway?
Some people, I believe, think that there's some sort of smoking gun or some sort of secrecy that the public does not know that goes on behind those closed doors. And the reason that is not one of my big issues is I don't think they're going to find anything. I know that the internal controls of the Federal Reserve are as tight as a drum. That's what I learned serving on the Federal Reserve Board for 5 years. Because I used to get sick of sitting there and listening to all of the control reports because they can get rather dry. The internal controls far outweigh anything that's going to be found in an audit, in my opinion. But some people interpret that I want to protect the Federal Reserve. No, I don't. So I don't know what they think that they're going to find. My position on the Fed is we need to fix it and tighten up its mission such that it will not have the discretion to do some of the things that it is now doing that's deflating the dollar. Yes, sir.
Let's talk about foreign policy for a moment. What
Yep.
would a Herman Cain presidency look like when it comes to issues like Libya and now evidently Syria?
Right. My approach to foreign policy will start with answering the fundamental question. Who are our friends and who are our enemies? I don't think most of the American people have a good idea about that. We have an idea about some. Look at the recent situation with Pakistan, when Osama bin Laden was taken out. We thought Pakistan was our friend. They have arrested the people who worked with our intelligence people to know where bin Laden was. Would your friends do that? Or would your enemies do that? That's the first question we must answer. Secondly, what is in the strategic interest of the United States of America for every country out there? So, number one, who are our friends and who are our enemies? Number two, what is our relationship with them? And what's in the strategic interest of the United States of America? Another example, Pakistan I got questions about. Israel, I don't have questions about. I made the statement in New Orleans yesterday, and a lot of people cheered, and I even got some people who booed. They don't like Israel. Well, fine. And the statement that I made was, if you mess with the United States of America, if you mess with Israel, you're messing with the United States of America. That's how strongly I feel about that relationship. Because I happen to believe that President Obama threw Israel under the bus a few weeks ago when Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was coming over here. And I was on a TV program, and it might have been Lou Dobbs who asked me, did you think that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was being rude as he sat there and chastised President Obama? I said, rude? No. I think Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was well within his right to chew out President Obama for throwing him under the bus 2 days before a visit. I'm not mad at y'all. The adrenaline is pumping y'all, okay? That's all this is. That's all this is. Now, so to finish the rest of it, there's more about our relationship with every country out there that I don't know than I know. And so my approach is, number one, I'm going to depend upon the people who know a hell of a lot more about it than I do. But I will develop a foreign policy strategy with every nation that we have any kind of relationship at all, good or bad, friend or foe. That's my approach. It's a business approach. You don't go and enter a new market with a product until you properly assess the market, properly assess the likelihood of success in trading. So I've got a lot of work to do in that area. A lot of work to do in that
Can I
area.
talk more about the Muslim thing that you mentioned before?
Wait. What, didn't I just answer that?
No, you didn't. What exact special precautions would you use?
I didn't.
And how do you know if those special precautions would
Okay,
work or not?
if you're trying to make me lose my cool, you're almost succeeding.
It's a confusing statement.
No. I never said I would use any special precautions.
Okay, so a Muslim applies to be in the administration, gets in like anybody else.
Yes.
Okay.
I never used those words. Those words was used by somebody on the internet, okay? Now, X.
What is your short?
Now, wait a minute, let me say this, y'all. It probably wasn't politically correct to raise my voice. But you know what's resonating with the American people? I'm going to be myself. I'm not going to be a punching bag, okay? But you can imagine that I've been asked that same question, thinking about that. I never said that. Okay, yes, sir.
What is your?
So I apologize. I apologize.
What is your specific short-term plan once you get in office to eliminate the $1.5 trillion annual deficit, and your longer-term plan to get rid of the debt? Since World War II, any tax changes and that kind of thing, the debt has never been reduced, not once, since World War II. How would you reduce it? 14 trillion plus.
The first thing we do is we boost this economy and then supercharge the economy. My 5-point booster plan is lower the top corporate tax rate to 25%, lower the top personal tax rate to 25%. We're the only country that has not lowered it. I talked about it in the meeting. Number 2, take capital gains to zero. Not trim it, slim it, 0. Number 3, suspend taxes on repatriated profits. There's nearly $3 trillion I heard a report today floating around out there that won't come home because it's going to be taxed. 4, provide a real payroll tax holiday. The full 6.2% for employers and the full 6.2% for employees for a year. Why? People are in debt because this economy's not been growing. They want to get out of debt. Employers are hanging on by their fingernails. Give them a break for a year, and then you end that holiday. That's called direct boost or direct stimulus, to use the jargon of today. Now here's the most important piece. Make it, other than the payroll tax, make those tax rates permanent until phase 2. Phase 2, replace the tax code with the fair tax, the national sales tax. It would supercharge our economy. Now, when we supercharge the economy, we're going to get more tax revenue coming in. Did you all know that if the unemployment rate is cut in half, and we go from 7.5 million people, 15 million to 7.5 million people, and we got 7.5 million more people working, don't you know they're going to be paying taxes? That's going to be additional revenue because the economy will be growing. We can't just tickle it up. We've got to do something to really boost it up. So that's how I want to approach the revenue side. On the cost side, I will do an across-the-board cut of every federal agency, day one, except defense. Probably about a 10% across-the-board cut, day one, every agency. Except defense. Now the reason I say except defense is because I need to look at every program to decide whether or not we need to eliminate some of those programs, because the world is not safer. So I don't want to, be hasty in judgment to say that we need to cut defense. Everything will be on the table, but I'm not going to mandate that 10% cut. Secondly, like I did in business and like most businessmen do, then you go agency by agency and you do a deep dive to find out overlapping programs, duplicate programs, redundant programs, inefficient programs, and you cut them out. Now, the Government Accounting Office has produced report after report identifying overlap, waste. Y'all seen some of these reports. It'll get a hot minute in the news and then you don't hear anything else about it. Well, we're going to do something about it because my newly appointed agency head and I will do the deep dive. Now, the reason I'm going to personally get involved in it is because the committee of 535, they're not going to cut it because it might be their friend's pet project. That's why it never gets done. Cutting spending has to come from the office of the president. And so then the other thing that I'm going to do is, once we do these very painful cuts, and I know people are going to say, well, you can't do that. Oh, yes, we can. You just have to be determined that you're going to do it. Maybe some federal workers are going to take early retirement. Good. I don't know all of the, things that we are going to cut it. It is irresponsible to continue the spending that we are doing in this country, the American people. And now you have the Democrats already talking about they want to raise some more taxes. No, we don't need to raise any more taxes. Now, the first budget that I would preside over and helping to prepare would be the fiscal 2014 budget. Because if we get elected in 2012, then the fiscal 2013 budget might already be approved. Because in the last 3 years, they haven't approved one before the fiscal year. So the first one that I get an opportunity to have direct input on would be the fiscal 2000 and, what did I say, 14 budget. Whether or not I can peel it all the way back to revenues coming in, I don't know, but that's gonna be the approach that I'm gonna try to do. And I think that by doing an across-the-board cut, making some tough cuts and this sort of thing, I think that's, so the short answer is, we're gonna have the spending going down, and we're gonna have revenues going up, because I want to re-strengthen the dollar. And the only way we're gonna do that, folks, you can beg the Chinese and everybody else all you want to, that's not gonna solve the problem, okay? Yes, sir.
Last question.
Okay, for the last question.
What's your name, man? I know you.
No pressure.
Yes, we've met several
Yeah.
times, I've interviewed you.
What's the first name?
Warner,
Warner, yeah.
publicsforum.com.
Yes.
Your answer for the foreign policy question was a perfect example of some of the things that a lot of these media guys are complaining about. The fact that you're saying, in a typical business sense, that when you get in office, you will discover what the problems are. You will, set up your own exploratory committees and your own staff to do it.
Right.
But they say that that's not a good enough answer, that you have to have a better foreign policy idea before you are president. What do you say to that?
Well, first of all, I'm not trying to make them happy. I'm trying to make the American people happy. When I travel and I talk to groups and I do town hall meetings, they like the fact that I'm not gonna make a snap shoot from the judgment. Secondly, election day to swearing-in day, I will then be given access to all of the intelligence information that I want or need. We will be putting together plans in that transition period. So, as soon as I become sworn in, I'm not gonna be starting from ground zero. And then I'll have a better idea. Now, that being said, I am talking to some ex-military and ex-intelligence people right now. But I can't tell you who they are, because I don't wanna blow that cover. They're not doing anything illegal, but a lot of people who are familiar with this stuff. So the ones who say that that answer is not good enough, I say, well, that's the answer that I'm giving because I'm gonna make responsible decisions. The other thing that I say is, President Obama made some promises about Afghanistan. We were supposed to be out of there this summer. How's that working out? Okay? I'm not trying to be disrespectful, I'm just simply saying, business people, responsible business people, they make responsible decisions based upon knowing all the facts and having all the information. Great question. Now, I know Ellen told me that was my last question. All right, Skip, don't ask me about the 3 things I've already covered, okay?
I will.
No, you just have to look on Granite Grok to get those.
Mr. Cain.
Yes, sir.
You've been talking about trying to supersize and supercharge the economy.
Yes, sir.
One of the things that is a drag on the economy is last year alone, 80,000 new regulations came out from the federal government.
Yes.
To a cost of approximately $1.75 trillion per year for
Yes.
companies and private citizens to comply with.
Yes.
That's a huge drag. What would your first steps be to ameliorate that problem?
I'm going to appoint some commissions for every regulatory agency, starting with the EPA. It's going to be a regulatory reduction commission. And the people that I will appoint to that commission to tell me, 1, what regulations are not needed, 2, which regulations are excessive, so we can, 3, how do we streamline the approval process, then take those recommendations and make the process more streamlined, as well as eliminate unnecessary regulations. And the people that I'm gonna appoint to those commissions, for example, with the EPA, will be people and businessmen who have been abused by the EPA over the past decade or so.
How fast?
That commission will be appointed within the first 30 days.
Completion?
Completion within 6 months. Because one of the things, for example, I want to accelerate as part of my energy independence strategy is drilling for oil, opening up the resources out west. And so that's why I'm going at the EPA first, to speed up that process so we can get this plan moving and get the oil exploration open up in the Gulf, off the coast of Alaska and the outer continental shelf.
Now, would elimination of the agency be an option with this commission?
Yes, that would be an option. If they come back with an analysis that says, we think we can move these responsibilities over to this agency and eliminate this agency, you are absolutely right, that is an option that I would consider.
That makes a Texan happy.
Let me, okay, let me close, let me say some concluding remarks. I'm driving my staff crazy, y'all. But I be the candidate, okay? Let me just say this. First of all, many of you in this room have interviewed me before, and I want to thank you for your fair treatment. And you know that if you have a question, you'll pick up the phone and you'll call Ellen or you'll call my office and you get clarification. And I just want you all to know that I do appreciate that, because you also know that there's a lot of good stuff that you can learn on the internet, and there's a lot of garbage out there. And we watch stuff. But if you ever have a question of clarification, make sure you contact us. And you can tell that I'm the type of person, if I said it, I'm going to say that I said it, and I'm going to explain it. And in this way, we won't allow disinformation to kill this campaign. You also probably notice that in some of the most recent polls, my candidacy is on the rise. That is because, folks, I believe the American people are connected with this common sense, straight in your face message of common sense solutions for this country. I think they're also resonating with the fact that I have not been a politician, and I give you answers straight up in terms of what I was proposed to do. So I wanted to thank you all, because many of you all are writing some very good stuff, and I encourage you to continue to do it, okay? With that, I got a plane to catch, y'all. Gonna be